Welcome to the video. In this video, we are going to see some of the basic understanding about the SQL and database. So in this video, we are going to see what is database, what is DBMS, what is SQL, and what is workbench and what is schema. So when we work with the data, we need to understand how the data is stored, how we can retrieve the data from the database. So data is stored in the database means central place. We need to understand how we can retrieve the data, how we can manipulate the data within a database. So for that purpose, we need to understand the SQL. So in this video, we are going to cover the basic understanding of the SQLs. So let's get started from the basics. So let's see what is database. So think of database as a digital storeroom where we keep all our information organized. It's like a giant box that stores all sort of data from name and address to the inventory detail. For example, imagine a school database. It's like a big container where we keep student details like their names, grades and attendance records. So database is a place. It organizes the data in such a way that it becomes easy to retrieve, manipulate and fetch. So this is about the database. So think of database like for example your memory. In your memory we have the files. So think of the database like a files. So we have the files like that. We have the database. So in that file we have the folders. So in the database, within the database we have the table. So in the database the information stored in the form of the table. So the database we can call as the collection of table. So all the data relating to that school, in this example the school, for example the data of the students, the staffs and the teaching and non-teaching staffs, all that things, it categorizes the data and stores the data in a different table within that database of the school. So the database is a central place, means the place where all the data is stored. Within the database we have the table. So database used to store the data in the form of table. So in the database you can have the many tables. In the tables, that tables can be related to each other. So this is the basic understanding about the database. Then we have the DBMS, means database management system. Now the DBMS, the database management system, is like a guardian of our digital storeroom, means the database. It's a one making sure everything is in the order and taking care of the data inside. So DBMS means it's a software that deals with the database. So if you want to interact with the database, we can interact with the database through DBMS. So DBMS is a software that enables us to interact with our database. So for example, think of your database as a school administrator. They manage the school data, ensuring it's organized, secure and accessible when needed. So DBMS is a software. By using that software, we can do some operation with our database. So this is about database management system. Then we have SQL, means structured query language. So SQL or the structured query language is like a bridge that connects us to the digital storeroom, means the database. It's the language used to ask questions and give commands to the database. So SQL is basically a programming language that a database understands. By using that programming language, means SQL, we can interact with our data through DBMS. We can interact with our data by using the SQL and we can do some action. We can retrieve the data, we can update the data, we can create table in our database by using SQL command. So example, let's say you want to find out how many students stored above 90%. You can use SQL to ask database, show the student with a score above 90%. So by using the SQL commands, we can get the data by filtering. We can get the data by using some SQL command. So the SQL commands are basically categorized into 5 brackets. So here are the 5 brackets of the SQL command. That is, first one is DDL, means data definition language. The purpose of data definition language is to define the structure of the database. So structure of the database means it's create the database. So the main commands you in the DDL means, here we have the create command. It's used to create the table. Then the alter table, if you want to modify anything within the created table, you can use alter command. And the drop table means, if you want to delete that table which is created within the database, we can use drop table command to delete that. So this is about data definition language. It is with the defining the structure or the schema of the database. So then we have data manipulation language, means if you want to deals with the data within a database, we use this command. So manage and interact with the data in a database. So example like insert, update, delete. So insert command is used to insert the data within to the database. Update is to update, means change the data within a database. So delete is to delete the data from the database. So this is about DML command, means data manipulation language. Then we have DQL command. It's a very prominent one. So data query language, the focus is for querying or fetching the data. So the data is stored in a database. If you want to retrieve the data, if you want to get the data from the database based on your requirement, we can use DQL command. It's used to retrieve the data from the database. So the select statement is widely used to get the data from the database. Then we have data control language. So this is the manages access to the data, ensuring security. So in order to ensure the security, we can use data control language. So it have the commands like grant and revoke. So grant is to give the permission to use that database, revoke is to take back the permission from using the database. Then we have transaction control language. So this is basically for the backup of the data from the database. So manages the transaction within the database. Example, commit, rollback, and save one. So this is the 5 category of the data SQL commands. So we'll look this in the future video. Then we have MySQL Workbench. So this is the MySQL Workbench is like a real action happens, where the real action happens. It's like a virtual toolbox where we use tools like commands to perform the actions on the database. Just like a carpenter uses tools to build something, then for example, consider a workbench as your computer screen where you use SQL commands like a tools. If you want to update the student grades, you'd use a command like update grade is equal to A, where the student ID is 123. So SQL Workbench is like a user interface where we write our SQL query and we will do some action on the database. So it's like a user interface where we write our SQL queries and we do some action. Then we have schema. The schema is like a blueprint telling how the storeroom is organized, means how the table or the database is to be created. It's like a map of the database, means it's like a map of the table, how it should be. It defines the structure, relationship, and rules inside the database. Example, in our school database, the schema would outline the structure, saying we have the table for student, one for grades, and link between them using student ID. So the schema means a map of the database. It will define how many columns it should have, what are the data type of that column, then how the data table within the database should be linked between them. So all these things is defined. That is called a schema. So this is about this video. In the conclusion, we understood about the database. So database is like a place where we organize our data. So it organizes the relational data in such a way that it's easy to retrieve and manipulate. Then we have DBMS, means the software that deals with the database. If you want to interact with the database, if you do anything with the database, we have one software that's called as DBMS. So example for DBMS is MySQL, Oracle, There are many DBMS softwares are there. So SQL, it's a programming language that enable us to write a query or write a commands to do some action with the database data or structure, anything. So it's a programming language that a database understand. By using this language, we can interact with the database. Then we have workbench. So workbench is like a, for example, I have MySQL workbench. In that workbench, we can write, it's a user interface. In that interface, we can write a SQL query and do some operations. So it's a user interface where we write SQL query. Then we have schema. Schema is like a map or the blueprint of the table. It defines the relationship, constraints, a school, in our example the school database. It create an outline or the map of the table. So this is about this video. In this video you'll understand some basic of the topic regarding the SQL and databases. So thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the next video. Thank you.